Buonasera.
Ladies and gentlemen, good evening. Today we take a step further in the title of this year's meeting. Let's welcome Luca Doninelli, a great friend for many of us. A great friend of meeting. As I was saying before, he took part in the meeting, because on the website you can see the participations of people, and he took part in 49 times, so you made your contribution for 49 times. A great writer. He started writing in 1978, I think, spurred by Giovanni Testori. He won the Campiello Prize, and he was a finalist at Strega Prize, and he is currently a finalist at Campiello 2016. The title of his book is Le cose semplici. But in the pages of this novel, Le cose semplici, there were several remarks and analogies with what we are currently living that led us thinking that Luca was the right person to talk about this topic. You know that maybe it's the first time that we ask a writer, a poet, so a person with a different language, to introduce and present in a more systematic way the title of the meeting. Since the very beginning, every gesture, not only every rally, every meeting, everything that we saw and listened to was an introduction to this title, You Are a Good for Me. So I was talking about his novel, Le cose semplici. It deals with a civilization that is collapsing on the brink of catastrophe, with destroyed people, destroyed things, people who lost any will to live, to work. Everything is collapsing, as in a science fiction novel. Transports, communication, everything is being destroyed, and good desires of people and the goodwill of people in such a context where living has become so hard, and where the most brutal part of human being is presenting, showing up. Well, there is something and someone that even in these situations, someone that invests on the destiny of people, someone who knows that a civilization corresponds to what it offers to human desires and human wills. And killing the will and desire is something very important, and people know that we should continue to have dreams and desires. And there is the protagonist of the novel, Chantal, a woman that looks at every person she met, as a good. She is brave enough to understand the desire of every man and women can have an impact. Chantal makes us believe that it is possible to believe in men, and her courage is not like the courage of Prometheus or the courage that the people with muscles have. It's a courage that it's not so different from Pope Francis' message that defined as courageous and brave the title we chose for the meeting. He talked about the courage of people who are not short-sighted and narrow-minded, a courage that can go beyond the uncertainty that we have and that makes us be afraid of other, and a courage that can encourage dialogue. And the dialogue that Pope Francis talked about is a type of dialogue that spurs us to act as if we were the others. I've heard like an echo of Chantal's courage in the message of Pope Francis. And what happens in the novel? There is a whole world that creates around Chantal, where there are contradictions, pains, strange situations, but the love and courage of Chantal are able to create another world. And so, maybe we would wonder where we are not experiencing exactly the same catastrophe that Doninelli talks about. Well, we wonder if there are people who want to love a different construction, to build a different world. And even Don Giussani said that a new civilization, a new culture, is the connection between all the pieces of good in order to make them prevail and put into practice. So, emphasizing what is positive and leaving the rest to the mercy of the Father. And I wonder if there are still men that want to have a different culture, a culture that puts together all the pieces and fragments of the positive things that exist. And here at the meeting, there are some of these positive pieces. So that was a question, but another question would be, do we Christians still believe in the capacity of the faith we received? And are we still able to believe in its beauty? Because if this is possible for Chantal, if it's possible for her to love positively, we cannot but wonder if this is also possible for us, and if we believe in the possibility of something similar. But if you weren't a good for me, why would I need to build something with you? Why would I need to involve you in the beauty that I met? You are a good for me is something that is not to be taken for granted, and Doninelli will talk about it. It's something very serious, because one can desire a construction if the other is also a good. But if this is not the case, Well, why? Why should I? Why shall I desire to construct something different? And so now I leave the floor to Luca.
Well, I wouldn't mention Chantal in my novel if I hadn't met this character in my daily life. It's good to talk about what you know and what you've learned. That's what I would like to do, since I don't have any specific title or certificate to exhibit. Therefore, it's upon me to tell you what I've learned from somebody else. This morning I talked with Esposito Sabatino after the Mass. Costantino Esposito, sorry, after the Mass. We said that who taught us something, well, was learned and listened to the teachings of somebody else. I would like to quote a person that over the past years, taught me very important things. There are many important people. Yet I met this person over the recent years that have been tough years for many different reasons. I've witnessed his life. Shall I get nearer? Well, good. Watching him teaching and speaking, well, that was a chance to better understand how life is mainly the answer, the reply to an invitation made from somebody asking us to do something. So a heartfelt thank you to the founder of Cometa, Erasmo Frigini, because what I've learned comes from him. I was in Cometa when Marco Aluigi phoned me and asked to give a speech. It was February. I had to sit down. And the first picture that came into my mind was the one of Mariah. Mariah that welcomes on her lap the dead body of her son, a son that she cherished, grew, and made her heart jump. At the same time, he was the son of the highest, God himself. The two things were just one thing, and now he was dead, harmless, lifeless, in her arms. What was the meaning of that moment? You are good for me. That was my first thought, the abyss that opens up for those that want to tackle this topic with no rhetoric. It's very easy to fall inside that abyss unless something would have happened. I experienced myself the experience of somebody that told me, you are good for me. Therefore, I would like to start with 3 preliminary observations. The first one, I'm sorry, I have to read. The most impressive cultural thing over the last years is the inability of Western countries to tackle with lucidity and remember enlightenment the tragedies that are happening, massacres by terrorism and the tragedies occurring every day in our seas, please go and visit the exhibition by Paolucci here at the meeting, because it's amazing. We are tackling an economic frailty leading to poverty and the persecution suffered by Christians throughout the world. It's urgent that we leave a position that can encompass all the factors that are important: terrorism, immigration crisis, and ideological hatred. It's difficult for us to find people that can tackle that problem because it's very complex, yet this is urgent. We have to help ourselves and create a view on the human beings that can support our thought. Thinking means to think about all the elements creating a complex situation. Humanism is collapsing, yet our question about the future is there. Facing terrorism, and we read newspapers, means that we are creating a close scenario. What will be our future civilization, wealth, shopping, daily life? The first figure would be that facing this you, which is huge, we as European are always looking about ourselves, and we always think about our projects. And we struggle in imagining other projects. We refuse imagining a new type of project, yet panic surges. Hence my question: how can we adopt a healthy thought without panicking and going towards paranoia? The third observation is about Massimo Cacciari, the former mayor of Venice. He said this funny sentence. He said that the main problem of every mayor is citizens, because they have silly lamentations and single problems filling up their brains. So citizens hinder the good measures of a mayor. So he said that cities without citizens would be very much better. In the origins of totalitarianism, the author created a difference between ancient tyrannies and current tyrannies. In the first ones, the man was smashed and humiliated. In the second ones, men are just useless. Giovanni Testori, do you remember Emilia post-Hamlet? Well, the man could be replaced by a robot with a synthetic lymph. History tells us that percentage of civil deceased in wars are increasing. This man is less and less important. Let's go to the core of my speech, and I will speak as a writer. Recently, the mother of a friend of mine has deceased, a very old woman. Over the last days of her life, she said to her son, "When I will be in front of our Lord, what shall I say?" My friend was struck by such words. His mother was a very faithful woman, and she was aware that meeting God was a personal meeting, a person that calls you by your name. In fact, a man opens up to another one if he hears his name calling out loud. So doing my job of writer and trying to narrate life as it is, and not to focus on ideas and models, well, the word you can be a negative word. I hate when people say, didn't I call you by your name? I often hear this question asked by persons that I don't even know. It's a kind of blackmailing, because if you answer no, you run the risk of looking like an ill-mannered. But if you answer, yes, of course, we were friends, well, behaving in that way, you enter a pseudo-confidence area in which the other person admits myself in his area of confidence. It's a kind of battle, and both of us end up neutralized. So the person standing next to me is not in an even position. He is in a power position, in a negative sense, which in this case power entails an unbalanced relationship. I know, I own, I know everything about you, I can reach you anytime, anywhere, while you don't know anything about me. And please read Kafka's book for some clarifications. This word you can also have a reductive function when something is not working or is not responding to our desire. For example, when you cannot thread a need, or a lock doesn't function, or the car doesn't start, you always say, hey, you, could you please work? Could you please do what I want? If you approach a chicken, it means, and you say, come here, you chicken, it means you want to wring its neck. So we have to remind ourselves that things exist in spite of ourselves, but at times we give consistence to objects. We treat objects as if they were ours. So the existence of other beings is a kind of opposition, an animosity. The other person is an enemy. And if we go through this aspect, which is inevitable according to myself, and we talk about Jonas, Moses, and the unnamed, l'innominato, by Manzoni, well, this "you" word is something different. In February, my wife underwent a surgical operation on her foot. She couldn't walk anymore, and I drove her on her transport wheelchair with small wheels. This aspect gave me the opportunity to get to know some aspects of the footwalk that I didn't notice earlier. Every single bump and gap transformed itself into an obstacle. If I didn't tackle that obstacle, the chair and my wife followed a path that was not intended to. These experiences are very simple, yet they teach us an astonishing thing, that is that the reality around us and each bit and pieces of this reality is not an object belonging to us. The sidewalk is not made for that wheelchair, and that bump that deals with me in this moment is something more. Thanks to that uneven sidewalk, I understand that the world follows rules that are not dependent on me. This is a kind of incumbence. Artists depicts it as a shout, a scream, a menace, such as in The Scream by Edvard Munch. Francis Bacon pictures or Van Gogh pictures are similar. At times, it can be a mysterious and a disquieting reality, such as in the pictures of Hockney or Matisse. The world pushes us to move, and that's why we always struggle to admit the presence of somebody else, of another world. But let's try to turn this situation. Welcoming the other human being fills up with joy and amazement. when somebody else notices us. If I were that sidewalk where I'm pushing the wheelchair, I would be so happy hearing you saying, that's calls us by our name and we thought he didn't even remember us. That's where he hugs us. You are good for me means to hug somebody. It's the translation into words of a hanag. People welcome us with open arms and mention our name. This doesn't mean that he will solve our problems and he will not dominate us. He just acknowledges we are something original and something unique. People behaving in this way helps us loving ourselves and knowing each other better. David Foster Wallace, that is well known to many young people and the elderly as well, underlines the role of human life. It is a wonderful piece of writing. Wallace says, fear is the basic condition, and there are many reasons for which you shall be afraid. Yet our task here is to learn to live so that we're not constantly afraid of something. We shouldn't use every tool and people to keep that problem away from ourselves. As for myself, not enough. The final line is not enough. And there is a kind of odd dissatisfaction within our hearts that cannot be filled up with something outside ourselves. That's the way things work since we were primitives. We can describe this situation with different words and jargons, yet there has never been so much stuff coming from outside, and that stuff seems to fill up that hole, that gap. But I personally believe that that hole can be filled up only through inner means and tools. Such tools have to be developed and have to do with the love we have for ourselves. I've never heard somebody that was not Christian describing love in such a way. If you think about those times in your life when you've treated people with love and cherish, if you cared of them without any personal interest, just because they were human beings, well, we should do the same with ourselves. We should treat ourselves as we were our best friend, our beloved child. I believe this is possible. We can achieve this goal. And the task we have on this earth is to learn behaving this way. One more point in my list. You are a good for me. In Shakespeare's Hamlet, one actor is inside Elsinore Castle, and he bursts into tears when he hears Hecuba's lamentations from talking about the death of Priamus. Hamlet is astonished by this reaction, and he asks himself, who is Hecuba for him, or who is this person for Hecuba? What does for me means? I cooperate with Oliver Twist's school, with Alessandro Mele, Mr. Figini, Paolo Biniti, and many more wonderful people. We have one subject named Everything is for Me. During that our teachers and students are invited to clean and tidy what was broken for many different reasons, yet there is a risk. Everything is for me might seem an utilitaristic sentence. A clean room is better than an untidy room, and so on. If it's so, the for me sentence means in my interest. It's in my interests that this table is tidy. If we want to translate everything is for me in another way, we could think about nothing belongs to me. We said that the reality obeys to laws that I didn't establish. Now we have to add that something that is not mine is for me. I clean the floor because it's given to me, such as a math class or my classmates. The whole of reality and my life itself has been given to me. The table to tidy and the floor to sweep is something I have to recognize. I have to overcome my instincts that do not coincide with nature. When you see a cloud rising in the west, immediately you say it's going to rain, and it does. When the south wind blows, you say it's going to be hot, and it is. Hypocrites. You know how to interpret the appearance of the earth and the sky. How it is that you don't know how to interpret the present time, which means that you only recognize signs if you have a personal interest in that. I don't repair the table to have a new table. It's because it's been given to me. I have to treat my classmate better. I have to be coherent. It's about the way we think about ourselves. Peter's, after he denies Jesus, cries tears, while Judas hangs himself. It's not that one sin is worse than the other one. The relationship with the reality is different. I believe that Judas loved Jesus, yet the problem is, who's this person? Who's this person I love? Can I love a prophet, a teacher, a master, a brother that suddenly turns mad?
Our civilization depends on the esteem and respect that we have for that you. It's a matter of esteem. And that's the sense of the Christian and laic civilization that we have built in the course of centuries, from Abraham to the foundation of the Greek polis up to nowadays. A civilization that not only produced Giotto and Leonardo, but that makes us, for example, leave our seat to an elderly person or a pregnant woman, or not considering an enemy, the teacher of our son, because our son was given a bad mark. This is a drama, and there is a dramatic space, sometimes tragic, where freedom is often challenged. There is something between me and you, something different, because freedom is not exerted on something. And the point that I really wanted to make, maybe because there is a happy ending, is that there is a space of silence between me and you, a space where the loneliness, the solitude of every creature is preserved, even though sometimes there is some rhetoric about the theme of communication, the fact of being always connected. And it is preserved as a relationship with something more than what I have in front of me. Even social media are often just silent and dumb witnesses of our loneliness. They are not different from the rest of reality. So the point here is how do you really become an unmissable you? This is not something that we should take for granted. One of the harder, but also hardest, but also more eye-opening experiences in my life was the fact that I stayed with a friend, a very dear friend, during his illness. When he was in the hospice, and you know that you go to a hospice when you can't do anything to save that person. Um, I went with other friends to visit him, and I stayed there all day long. We talked about everything, we read texts together, and the truth that came out was that there was a help that we could give him, but not something that could really respond to the silent cry that we saw in those eyes. Because true always requires a leap. It's not something to be taken for granted, while the banality of evil is to be taken for granted. And he was the one who had to take that leap. At that moment, it was clear that the response to that silent cry was not in our words and not in what we were, but in the encounter with somebody that wasn't us. So saying yes to that encounter, and I can assure you that he said yes to that encounter until the very end. Between me and you, there is a hard and dense silence, but in this silence, there is the root of good. I'm not the response to your questions, and you are not the response to mine. I cannot have a power on you, nor you on me. And this is the first thing we learn when we look in the eyes of of a person that is dying. The fifth point now. This is why I was talking before about you as something that can be seen as an enemy. There are expressions of Jesus that priests comment reluctantly, such as turn the other cheek or love your enemies. Almost no one, even baptized people, believe in these sentences. The first one is treated as a sort of boutade, and in 60 years, I've just heard it when people said, well, I'm not one that turn his or her cheek, or, but you, since you are Christian, shouldn't you turn the other cheek? The destiny of the other sentence was even worse, because it cannot be treated as just a boutade, as a line. Love our enemies, let it alone. I can protect myself from my friends. May God defend me from my enemies. It's like saying God can deal with the ordinary, and I can deal with what is extraordinary without needing God. Who is an enemy? An enemy is someone that has different rules from mine and that maybe wants me to die, even if I don't know why. And I advise you to read Cormac McCarthy's No Country for Old Men. So, the enemy is the reality that continues to be indifferent, something that doesn't go hand in hand with the ideas that come to our minds. An enemy is something, for example, that doesn't accept or doesn't approve a project, or says that, for example, one of my books is horrible, even though he or she hasn't even read the book. An enemy is somebody that is an enemy for us. And the enemy cannot be eliminated. You can try it, but maybe you will not succeed in doing it, because at the end you will feel empty or too bad to realize that there is this empty space. So love your friends for me means two things. First, love your life, even if there is someone who wants to kill you or eliminate, so to say, your life. And love the life of your enemies. And also, do not stop loving what you have received, what of the beautiful things you have received. So trying to face a position of animosity that is ours, first of all. Sixth passage, an undeserved beauty. You, as I said, is a drama, a tragedy. It's one of the most dramatic and elementary experiences. Sorry if I'm reading, but every year it gets harder and harder for me to talk to an audience. So I apologize for this. And I do not feel up to that task. So, to say you have to win something, knock down a wall. Even a friend can become an enemy, and the issue cannot be solved. And it's easy because you is first of all ourselves. Very often, we are the worst enemies to ourselves. This is why David Foster Wallace says that we should treat ourselves as we would treat a good friend, a precious friend, or a child that we love more than our life. Once in 1979, I and another person that would have become one of my dearest friends, and I have at least four dearest friends, we went to Paris. I studied at the Cattolica University in Milan, and he studied at Statale, so the public university. We had met not very long time ago, but we went on very well. And we bought some tickets that forced us to stay in Paris for 15 days. But after a few days, we quarreled. Talking about what? About philosophy, as university students do. So the topic, what is the first evidence? And he talked about existentialism, and I talked about neo-Thomism, coming from two different universities, and we almost came to blows. So the return ticket was for 12 days after that episode, so 12 days in hell for me, and maybe for him as well, because we didn't talk to each other for 12 days. That was the enemy for me at that moment. Not Hitler, not the communists or the fascists, but my friend. So the thought that helped me at that time, and it's the same that has always helped me over time, was that I had to fight my animosity, hoping that he did the same. And I told myself, I am the enemy. What helped me? First of all, the memory of what I had received, of the privilege I was given and donated. So I was in Paris with a friend for an unexpected holiday. We went to Saint-Germain-des-Prés. We were strolling along the Seine with a bouquinist, and I was in Montmartre, Bagnolet, Boutocaille, and I saw such a big beauty, and I realized this for the first time, because it wasn't easy to think that it's difficult for a 23-year-old guy to think this way. And I realized that the source of my joy was different. I was young, I was nice, I was easygoing, I was playing the guitar, and I didn't consider myself as nothing. Well, I considered myself to be quite cool, actually. But that day changed something. Who donated all of this to me? I wondered. Jesus Christ was his name. Jesus Christ had told me that we come to light for this. And this was life, an undeserved beauty. For sure, it is right that there is such a period in life. Remember, for example, the exhibition in migrants. There are very young people among migrants, and the numbers, the figures, are impressive. But those who received a gift sooner or later must ask oneself who sent this gift. Otherwise, we remain friends. We remain children, sorry. So Italy, Europe, the world needs this. Then the years of hard work arrived, the years of pain. Someone of us got ill. We were asked to leave the most important people of our life. It was like losing a hand or an arm. It was like seeing our blood, my blood, flowing in a manhole. And I wondered what my destiny was. However, being aware of that gift that arrived in the years of carefreeness, remained. There's always been someone who helped us not to forget, even the place where we are now. Well, I was here 49 times, so in 49 moments I was helped not to forget. Because this is like a haunt branding that you do not remove from your soul or from your body, and you cannot deny anymore. So, in other words, you are good to me because you are free, because you are a gift. Seventh point, the most beautiful thing we have received. The changes that are happening before our eyes, the carnages that are often incomprehensible, and that human migration of unprecedented proportion need us, needs our decision, needs a culturally interesting stance and a position, a stance that is absolutely personal. It's incredible that when we ask what is a man, a question that everyone asked in the course of history and that maybe not anyone asks anymore, is that several solutions were just a sort of republication of principles of Hitler or Goebbels, that is, the distinction between men considered as a purpose or as a means, something horrible that the global market transformed from horror to something obvious, such as it is shown by things like the heterologous fertilization or surrogacy or womb for rent. For sure, a child that is born in this way maybe can become a saint, and maybe also two gay parents can become, because here we are talking about the sin and not about the sinner. Otherwise, who could be saved? A writer must know something, otherwise he or she cannot be a writer. The principles and laws that are valid for small things are also valid for the great ones, and vice versa. The writer do the detailed work after a general doesn't do the detailed work after the general drawing, but he starts from the details. And I would like here to tell an interesting episode.
A few days ago, a dear friend of mine that many of you know, a journalist with a good workplace, he likes his job and received many satisfaction from it, told me that he will completely change his life. I won't give any name. It would not be fair to do that. He said that some facts led him to leave Italy and go to a very faraway place, doing a job that he doesn't know whether he would like it or not. I was about to say, you are crazy. Please follow this narration because it might seem simple, yet it is difficult, as it always is. All of a sudden, I was completely amazed. I thought, you're completely dumb. And all of a sudden, I felt this extraordinary sensation. He said yes to unprecedented situations. He said yes to universal laws, laws guiding the cosmos, nature itself. It's not about our satisfaction. I understood that that way of doing and behaving was the most human. And I had to learn from that behavior. I had to learn to understand the reason why my friend, and I'm very sad he will leave Milan, decided to go away. Well, that was created in one single second. That's order. And I have to draw conclusions from that experience. I understood better what's the most beautiful thing that a man can receive as a gift: communion. It's not about being friends and get along well. It's about supporting one another. We are very frail in our lives, and there is a huge drawing, a deeper one, and we have to say yes. As my friend said, in that faraway country, something started to happen that we couldn't imagine. Nobody created that situation, and he was leaving Italy to serve this new situation. The beauty of that is that it's not really about leaving Italy for Venezuela. It's about writing, for example, a novel and deciding what to write and how. The more I learn from similar lessons, the less I will be scandalized from unhuman situations, such as daily tragedies that followed us over the last months. If a friend tells you and is the witness of a gift, you can learn to read the gift in front of your enemy. Love your enemies. I'll now conclude by saying that the cultural answer tackling what's happening now, and some sources say that this is just the beginning. Well, our lives will change completely. Our cities and son's future will change completely. That's why we have to be supported by the way in which I look my wife, my job, my colleagues. We have to think about our history during the polis or res publica. It was about the fact that the man was considered as such. All the limitations coming from mentalities, different mentalities, didn't cancel this important fact. Life, my life, our life, well, it took thousands of centuries to create similar lives. A good life, waking up in the morning, open the window, drink a coffee, meet people that are similar to ourselves, share worries, loves, pains, expectations, and then deciding what to cook for dinner, walk in a park, visiting a friend that is about to die, or even listening to our footsteps on the gravel, leaving for a faraway country, or deciding the way in which plants have to be disposed in our sitting room, looking and watching at a football match, or accepting in a human way that we're going to die soon. Well, they can take that away from us, yet we have to keep them in ourselves. We don't have to throw them away. We don't have to throw our life away. We have to participate in our lives. We have to accept the responsibility of carrying out good life. Eliot said that the blood of martyr will flow on the steps of the temple, yet for that to happen, we have to build the temple. Humanity is going to change deeply, yet we have to be able to say this to future generation. Dear friends, those that were before us worked for centuries to create something that is not in our hands. My future, my present is not in my hand either. Everything is for free. Each and every one of us is a gift. That's why you are a good for me. And I hope that one day you will be able to repeat that. And if not you, the sons of yourselves or the sons of your sons. Thank you.
Grazie.
Thank you.
Grazie Luca, credo che
Thank you, Luca. I think that what you told us, what you evoked, is the narration of an experience of your life, even if, well, it wasn't in that exact form. I think that whatever you said is real experience, and as for everything real, for everything that is supported by experience and not by ideology or systems, as you said before, I think that all real things get in contact with me and with all the people listened to that as a way to look at life, to consider what we have around, a real experience that is told me, for me and to me, becomes a possible perspective that I can have on my life and on what surrounds me. So I invite myself and also all of you to hold dear and keep in your hearts what we have listened to and use it. Maybe it's not a very beautiful term, or it isn't. However, you should use it as a way to consider all the topics that we will also deal with in the following days here at the meeting, because the experience of the other becomes a possible point of view. Because this point of view, this looking at you as something that is given to me, is as something that is free, as Luca said, is this strong enough for the challenges that we have in our lives? Because in this period, this moment of history, is a very dramatic period, and we cannot think that convictions are enough. Today, we really need something that goes through life, something that is compelling and convincing, because it is connected to life. And in this way, no one else can remove it. But this type of process is not ideological, is connected to experience, to the reality. That you becomes a different perspective I can have, a different look on life. And if I experience supports this conviction cannot be eliminated anymore and will be certain. And I also think that in a place such as this one, as the meeting, that is a little thing if compared to the tragedies in the world, well, even the meeting can help and make a contribution to strengthen this certainty, this conviction, thanks to the experiences, thanks to experiencing relationships with other people. It's a chance for this certainty to become stronger. Otherwise, a meeting wouldn't be held. It's not a period in history where we should hold events if they are not useful, if they do not have a purpose. If we go on with the meeting, is something that we think can be useful, and since we are convinced about that, and there are many people that are convinced about that, we increase the fundraising campaign at meeting because we were encouraged by the positive experience of last year, and so we are going to relaunch it in the various halls. You are going to find numberless places and stands where you can donate, make donations, and you will find the campaign logo there. So donations shall be done just in those places and not in others. So thank you all, have a nice evening, and I wish you the best for this meeting.